When squatters turned my cherished barn into a circus, I was ready to fight back, armed with loyalty, laughter, and 2 determined dogs. But would my determination be enough to reclaim my home? The moment I laid eyes on the gruesome tableau that had become my barn, it felt as though my heart had been wrested from my chest and tossed into a pit filled with broken dreams. My beloved sanctuary, the place where I spent countless days mending fences and tending to my crops, now laid defiled, adorned with tattered tents and the unmistakable whiff of despair. The sight of those squatters, clad in mismatched clothing, their bare feet smeared with mud and stolen pride, filled me with an indignation that was simultaneously furious and absurd. Who did these people think they were? This wasn't some backwoods shelter to be claimed without a second thought, but my sacred space. I could practically hear the echoes of the countless times my father had reminded me that respect for property goes hand in hand with respect for the land. Clearly, these trespassers missed that memo entirely. An even greater insult came when I thought about how I had pleaded with the mayor, George Radcliffe, a man whose suit screamed authority while his actions whispered corrupt. After brushing off my concerns with a cavalier wave of his perfectly manicured hand, he had the audacity to say, "Lila, we have bigger fish to fry." Bigger fish, my foot! Did those fish include public safety? Or perhaps big fish was code for a nice fat bribe? The only fish I cared about were the ones I had for dinner, and they certainly didn't squat in my barn. With a huff, I stormed back to my farmhouse, burning with indignation and preparing to wage a war of my own. But this wasn't one I would fight empty-handed. No, my saviors had 4 legs, a love for justice, and a knack for chaos. Charlie and Diesel were about to put an end to this absurdity. As I slipped on my worn boots and gathered my boys, adrenaline surged through my veins like a shot of espresso. Charlie, my loyal German shepherd, and Diesel, the bulldog with a soft spot for cuddles but an iron fist when it came to intruders, were more than just dogs. They were my brothers in arms. I could see it in their eyes, an electric understanding that may have been less about squatting again and more about serving up the just desserts that these trespassers so richly deserved. What could be more satisfying than shaking the foundation of those overconfident squatters, leaving them quaking in their flimsy tents? Oh, the images danced in my head as we made our way back to the barn, armed with dog treats and an unwavering determination that would make even David face his Goliath with delight. As we neared the barn, I heard the distinct sound of laughter and, wait for it, indisputable raucousness. They were having a party. My shoulders seized with disbelief. Had I really just come home to find the squatters celebrating in the one place that symbolized my hard work and sacrifice? Wildly angry, yet chuckling at the sheer nerve, I was ready to unleash my canine champions upon those unwelcome guests. I positioned myself behind a cluster of hay bales and peeked out. The scene was surreal. One squatter appeared to be attempting to juggle, while another strummed an off-key tune on a guitar with a broken string. How ironic that my barn had turned into a circus. But in the theater of absurdity, my dogs were the stars, and the plot twist was about to unfold in spectacular fashion. With a commanding whistle, I called forth my mighty duo from their vigilant stance nearby. Diesel bounded first, a brick of muscle and sheer will, while Charlie followed closely, a sleek missile of determination. Initially taken aback, the laughter quickly morphed into a cacophony of panic. Tent poles jingled as they attempted to rise and flee, arms flailing awkwardly. It was sheer comedic gold. Surprise, my squatters. Welcome to my property, where your ill-conceived squatting days are numbered. I shouted, half mocking as my guard dogs charged the impromptu gathering with pure, unadulterated energy. The look of disbelief on their faces was nothing short of spectacular, like a bunch of toddlers caught with their hands in the cookie jar. The ensuing chaos was everything I had hoped for and more. I reveled in the sight of frantic bodies wrestling to untangle themselves from blankets and half-opened bags of chips, and I could barely contain my laughter. "Isn't it rude to throw a party without inviting the rightful owner?" I teased, unable to resist the opportunity for some jabbing sarcasm. As the last remnants of festivity dissolved into sheer terror, the squatters panicked, shouting incoherent apologies and dashing for the makeshift exits they had so casually fashioned. My laughter transformed into full-blown jubilation as I watched them sprint like their tails were on fire, scattering in every direction like startled roaches when the lights flicked on. Just as I relished my small victory, the icy grip of anxiety clawed at me. This victorious moment felt sweet but fleeting. They would not just vanish into thin air. Fear fueled my fire, and they'd undoubtedly return with a vengeance. I turned to my boys, who seemed to share my mix of triumph and apprehension. Their muscles rippling beneath their coats, they were ready for whatever chaos came next. My farm, my sanctuary, was not just a battleground for the rights over land, but a literal fight for the life I had built, cultivated, and cherished beyond measure. With my faithful guard dogs by my side, I was ready to reclaim my home. The next move was mine, and, oh boy, it was going to be one for the ages. Would I finally get the justice I so desperately sought? As I stood in the thrumming heart of my sanctuary, the remnants of chaos left wavering in the barn like ghosts of the past. The laughter of the squatters still echoed in my ears, each peal more ridiculous than the last. "What are these clowns doing?" I muttered incredulously, finally caught between disbelief and a simmering resolve. Had they truly transformed my hard-earned barn into some slapdash comedy club, complete with unwelcome performances and questionable taste in snacks? I could feel my indignation swelling, red like the rising sun, ready to fuel the fire of action. As I watched my dogs revel in their newfound roles as guardians of the realm, I knew this skirmish was just the first act in a multifaceted drama, a drama that I was determined to win. The squatters may have thought they could claim my barn, but they had underestimated the lengths I was willing to go to reclaim my space, my home. Charlie and Diesel reveled in their canine glory, tongues lolling and tails wagging as they nosed their way excitedly through the mess. Those two were ready for battle, and honestly, so was I. Breathing deeply, I adopted a battle stance, preparing for whatever absurdity these loiterers would toss my way next. Recall, however, that this isn't just a dance-off for squatter supremacy. This was a full-blown siege. I'd already started thinking strategically. What would coming attractions look like? The squatters would undoubtedly regroup with their egos bruised but hearts mighty. They likely wouldn't give up without a fight. In their muddled minds, I could already envision the victim's plot they dreamt up, with Mayor Radcliffe selling the sob story on his next round of shamelessly produced town hall meetings, complete with an audience who lapped up his disingenuous charm like cats with cream. Ah, but wait. I had my own layered strategy boiling beneath the surface, one that included a visit from a personal, rather persuasive ally. "Tommy," I hollered over my shoulder, the word bursting forth like a sunbeam through a cloud of frustration. My loyal neighbor, that scruffy beacon of vigilant protection, was next on my agenda for war planning. In a world now upended by chaos and raucous farmhouse cabaret acts, who better to stand at my side as I faced off against hopelessly reluctant squatters than the man whose jeans were usually splattered with more mud and grime than any quasi-artist could dream of? As luck would have it, Tommy emerged from behind a tree, a confident smirk on his face that suggested he'd caught the whirlwind show behind the barn. "Lila, I heard the ruckus on my way over. You really let him have it, didn't you?" His excitement matched mine, and I breathed a bit easier, knowing I had someone in my corner who understood the madness at play. We quickly formulated a plan peppered with dry humor and enough strategic charm to leave the squatters questioning not just their methods, but their life choices, of which squatting on my property was, without doubt, the most regrettable. Listen, they think we're just going to sit back and let them twist the narrative. They've got it all wrong, and it's time to show them just how stubborn this Hartman farm can be, I exclaimed, excitement tinged with righteous fury. With Charlie and Diesel retaking their watchful posts, I rallied Tommy to devise our scheme. He had an uncanny knack for thinking outside the box, something akin to twisting straw when the wolf showed up. "So let's twist it, shall we?" A few strategically placed signs demanding that trespassers leave wouldn't just send a message but could be soaked in enough humor to show them the absurdity of their situation while allowing me to reclaim my dignity. We would fight their ridiculousness with an army of laughter, and I have a sneaky feeling it just might work out in our favor. So what if I turned a few heads with my witty signs decorating the perimeter of my barn? The layers of absurdity that built this entire scenario had me crying tears of both laughter and rage. As the sun dipped low on the horizon, casting golden rays over my enslaved sanctuary, I bounded with Tommy toward the wooden arsenal, a place where we would find creativity wedged between old tools and hay bales that could double as effective barricades. Armed with a paintbrush, a fine selection of colorful poster boards, and enough cans of spray paint to bring Picasso's nightmares to life, we began our mission, chuckling with every comically exaggerated phrase we managed to craft. All squatters must exit the premises for health and safety reasons, aka, the dogs ate your right to party here. I couldn't help but cackle at the thought of that one, as gut-wrenching as it was genius. If we had an arsenal of sharp wit to counter theirs, we might just stand a fighting chance. After all, it was their absurdity that had first breached the gates. Now it was our turn to shift the tide of absurdity back in our favor. By the time we finished adorning the barn with our riot of colorful signage, I felt as if we were armed with our own brand of absurd, ready to unleash it upon unsuspecting squatters still licking their wounds. "Time for the showdown of the century," I declared dramatically, and Tommy broke out into peals of laughter that echoed around the farm. Let's see if they're really ready to tango with the Hartman household and its loyal dogs. This is going to be like their private circus, minus the laughter. I had all the confidence that if karma were a sharp, snapping dinosaur, it would be on our side, ready to address this nonsense with a flourish. They better be prepared, because the Hartman family doesn't walk quietly into the night. I winked at Tommy, feeling buoyed by the power of outrageous justice. With the stage set, we would stand shoulder to shoulder, ready to reclaim my sanctuary and serve up a dish of reality they would never forget. How could they possibly extract themselves from this predicament now? With laughter still ringing in the twilight air, I surveyed our handmade arsenal of colorful posters that flapped lightly in the gentle evening breeze. Each sign had been crafted with care, and honestly, I couldn't remember when I'd felt this energized, like a riled-up bull standing ready against a sea of sheep. "Unwelcome guests will be chased by rabid dogs," proclaimed one sign, its letters dripping with exaggerated menace, while its neighbor read, "Looters will be eaten for dinner." The imagery danced in my mind, bright and audacious, and I suddenly felt like the director of a dark comedy, preparing to unveil the masterpiece that would send my unruly squatters packing. I relished the thought of their faces contorting in confusion and embarrassment, a spark of vindictive joy igniting my restless spirit. Enough was enough. Tommy stood beside me, his scruffy hair backlit by the impending sunset. "God, Lila, this is genius. They'll have no clue what hit them," he roared with laughter, and I could see the gears of his mind whirring with ideas. Was this what strategy looked like? A cocktail of laughter spiked with indignation? My heart raced with a thrilling blend of mischief and determination. Seriously, let's just hope their first time with irony doesn't backfire and take us all down like dominoes, I replied, raising an eyebrow at him. We both shared a moment lost in each other's mirth. Two farmers against the world, our spirit rising from the ashes of unexpected chaos, channeling frustrations into something that would make the outcome of this battle not just bearable, but downright comedic. As night fell, a cool haze blanketed the barn. "Let's make sure those signs really pop so they can read them while sprinting away," I quipped, grabbing a can of luminous spray paint. "What fun is it if they can't appreciate our creative flair?" With exaggerated swipes of bright colors, I transformed our initial Homeowner war banners into works that would have made any street artist proud, if the primary goal was to humiliate rather than beautify. A rabbit sprouted from a can, hopping frantically along the danger zone. It was absurd and oddly perfect. Tommy laughed so hard he nearly toppled over as we adorned the barn's perimeter, our impulses turning rebellion into a whimsical showpiece. Finally, the signs stood like warriors against the open field, ready to make their statement. Our work completed, I straightened my back and felt a wave of accomplishment wash over me. The last rays of sun dipped below the horizon, and I could almost feel a palpable tension rising, the air alive with the kind of electricity that comes before a storm. The squatters had realized the power of claimed real estate was no match for two determined farmers and a pair of guard dogs, but they didn't know what was coming next. I turned to Tommy, who looked ready for battle, a mischievous grin plastered across his face. "You ready to roll? It's showtime," I said, my voice smooth and confident, an edgy conductor leading an orchestra composed of our well-prepared symphony of response. We stepped back into the barn for our final preparations. A flawless plan needed perfect execution. Sure, my nerves were doing the cha-cha, a mix of agitation and thrill, but that didn't matter. We were armed with humor and heart. "I'm bulletproof tonight, like Captain America, except I have dogs instead of a shield," I declared, pumping my fist theatrically in the air. In the moisture of the barn, the warmth of camaraderie held its own kind of power, steadying my resolve. I looked at Charlie and Diesel, who seemed to understand the game we were all playing, their eyes bright, waiting and alert. With their mighty fur and playful growls, they were thickening the plot by the moment, ever the guardians of my little kingdom. And boy, when the squatters finally emerged from their dubious retreat, it was a sight worth witnessing. Confusion blanketed their faces, dressed in uncharacteristic choking disbelief, a motley crew almost heroic in their own right. Perhaps they thought they were gladiators from a forgotten reality show, ready to scoop up their misplaced dignity. Wrong. "Welcome. Tonight's show is all about how to get out of my barn," I hollered, suppressing laughter as Charlie and Diesel positioned themselves alongside me like furry sentries, growing larger with every bark. Their ruckus mirrored my own brazen confidence. Was this dog-powered rebellion theater or torture? Honestly, it didn't matter, as long as we sent them scampering back into the shadows. The first brave squatter, a scraggly fellow donned in layers of grime, took a hesitant step forward, his bravado a paper-thin facade, as our spirited entrance shattered any pretense he might have mustered. "What the hell is this? A school play?" he shouted, frustration bubbling beneath the surface. I couldn't help but laugh. A deep, hearty chuckle that echoed across the field into the darkening sky. Now, don't be so dramatic. It's a masterpiece. You should appreciate the craft behind my creativity." I shot back with an exaggerated wink, channeling the unmistakable energy of a proud artist who had just put her most controversial piece on display. And thus, we entered a wild game of verbal sparring that danced wildly between absurdity and chaos, a comedic showdown that sent sparks of defiance shooting through the air. But this tale was far from over. The squatters might have miscalculated their fortitude, but they couldn't yet see that this story had only just begun. My heart raced at the unfolding drama, the absurdity of their entitled claims meeting the unwavering spirit of my cherished land. As they continued to squawk and dodge our signs, a spark of realization glimmered in the back of my mind, like dominoes ready to topple. Would this climactic battle bend to the sheer will of my loyal pack, my creative fury, and an unyielding sense of justice? I couldn't wait to find out. What other surprises lay ahead in this outrageous tale of chaos and revenge? As the absurdity of the moment flooded my senses, the ringleader's face morphed from confusion to outrage. A theatrical performance meant to dazzle, but all it did was fuel my amusement. "This isn't even a barn! Are those pastel colors a joke?" he slurred, trying to regain his swagger while my laughter rang loud and unapologetic over the twilit field. "Oh, my dear squatter, you really think you're here for an art critique? Bless your heart." I swung my hands theatrically, embracing the ridiculousness of my own concocted artillery. A barn, a vibrant canvas, a stage, where the absurd met the oddly triumphant. With every bark from Charlie and Diesel in sync, the perfect score erupted, echoing through the chaos, creating a symphony highlighting the sheer folly of his claim. With each passing moment, my confidence soared while they floundered. The bewildered expressions on the squatters' faces were as priceless as the mixed-media masterpiece I had just created, matted in the chaotic energy of my festooned fortress. "Are you sure you don't want a tour?" I shouted, a gleaming challenge that barely concealed the smirk plastered across my face. "Specials include free eviction notices and a complimentary kick in the pants if you're feeling audacious." It was as though I was conducting a symphony where wit replaced notes, each jab echoing through the twilight like a battle cry against their entitlement. The laughter shared with Tommy buzzed in the air and bolstered my effrontery. This was so much bigger than mere squatter antics. This was the culmination of hard-earned resilience and the rejection of indifference. As they squirmed, I caught Tommy in my peripheral vision, urging me into our next phase of audacity. A brilliant tactical maneuver, triggering the dogs to join our comedic show. "Charlie, Diesel," I commanded with a flourish, as if double-casting rebellion in a dramatic opening. The thrill of the moment propelled me forward, unyielding and electrified. The dogs rushed into action, bounding towards our unexpected guests, ferociously playful but intact with instincts honed on command, barking like a squadron ready for deployment. "See? Now the bark match is officially on," I quipped, every word accentuated with the defiance of a general leading an army of over-the-top absurdity, guarded by my beloved canines and heated by unfettered determination. "What have you done to deserve this?" one of the squatters yelled, gesturing toward my newfound canine allies, each growl a warning that echoed with the promise of playful duty more than malicious intent. I mustered my most theatrical eye-roll, burst forth with, "Oh, honey, you've made a serious error in judgment, stepping foot on property you clearly don't belong to. However, we have options. You can either waltz your way out or gamble with the guard dogs who possess qualifications in discernment." A dramatic pause followed, the sheer delight of my perverse logic filling the air as the crowd of squabbling squatters gawked, trapped in a now festive vice of divine judgment and panting companions. The tension reached a climax, teetering between laughter and defiance, my laughter cascading over their flustered rebuttals like an uncontrollable waterfall. The spotlight glared on them. Victory was within an eyebrow-raising grasp. Oh, but of course, they weren't ready to concede yet. "We can stay if we want," the scraggly ringleader barked, pathetic bravado in the face of our escalating spectacle. "Sure, bud," I hollered back with heavy sarcasm, flicking a mock salute. "How about we negotiate your stay with something more feasible, like low-fat organic carrots for these furry warriors?" Behind me, the dogs growled enthusiastically, noses raised, as if supporting my proposal, a defiant canine army prepared to execute the playful evictions with wagging tails and mischievous grins. This was my barn, my cherished haven, and I felt that unmistakable truth rise in my chest, simmering with righteous indignation. There had been a time when my home felt violated, chased by the shadows of entitlement. Yet here I stood, belly laughing, daring them to come and claim what they believed was theirs with all the ridiculous confrontation my bold flair could muster. You know, it takes a special kind of individual to declare they own something that they so obviously do not. I teased, my heart pounding furiously as if it were the drum roll preceding the climactic finish to a grand event. The squatters exchanged wide-eyed glances, donning wisdom in their battle-fueled fervor. With every word, I felt a rising wave of momentum, the collective energy swirling around us, ebbing and flowing with the absurdity of our bizarre spectacle. "Should we ask for their feedback on our lovely decor?" Tommy snickered, leaning in as if a confessional. Perhaps we could be their art critics after all. My eyes sparkled with mischief, and as the ringleader spluttered more confused threats, the ensemble of absurdity solidified, a confrontation that had become less about reclaiming my barn and much more about conspicuously amplifying the sheer folly of their audacity. This was merely the prelude of the chaos to come, each thought igniting storms of creativity, invigorating us for whatever little wonders and confounding aggression we had yet to encounter. I wondered just how far their entitlement would take them, and whether they could handle the relentless resistance offered by my dogs and me. The ringleader's feigned defiance waned like an undercooked soufflé as the chaos continued to swell. "Art critics? You think you can turn this into a joke?" he shouted, the desperation oozing from his every word, hovering in the cool evening air like an unwelcome fog. I couldn't suppress my laughter. It burst free, a guttural response to the absurdity unfolding before me. Oh, sweetheart, it was a joke. Just like the image of you mistakenly thinking you belong here. I mean, what's next? Sample sales at your open house, I shrieked, bouncing on my heels like an over-caffeinated cheerleader who just discovered her team was winning in a landslide. I'll be ready with my pamphlet on the historical significance of squatting versus rightful ownership, if you'd like a summary. My voice sliced through the tension, peppering the atmosphere with the sharp wit of an overzealous playwright. The squatters huddled together, exchanging furtive glances akin to lost house cats bundled in a rainstorm. They were clearly debating their next move. It was painfully apparent that their bluff had been called, and my dogs were like the pens on the chessboard, nimble, ready to tip the scales towards my glorious victory, or, perhaps lunge forward to claim their own slice of hilarity right from the unsuspecting ringleader's socks. I wish I had popcorn, I mused, nudging Tommy playfully, whose smirk spread like wildfire across his scruffy face, as if he'd just been handed the best news of the year. How about you, Tommy? Do you think they'd like mustard on that crow we're about to serve? The gears of battle were primed, and I could feel the delightful tension crackling in the air as the next round of wordplay was about to initiate a glorious melee. Look, rumbled the skeptical Squatters, his voice dripping with annoyance. We just need a place to stay. Get off your high horse. High horse, he said. I let out a snort, barely able to contain my mirth, and I levered theatrically on my imaginary saddle. Oh, honey, I didn't realize we were playing equestrian. You know what? I'll gladly challenge your need with a simple, get a real job. The dogs, clearly motivated by my fervor, barked in agreement, their tails whipping through the air as though they too were part of my theatrical ensemble. You see, everyone here has worked for their shelter, all of us except your gang of blurred lines and half-baked non-occupant claims. My heart raced, and I reveled in my own sardonic enthusiasm, knowing very well they'd never seen such an unexpected barrage of humor mixed so generously with righteous resentment. An uneasy silence fell. Perhaps they weren't quite prepared for my fiery demonstration of defiance and good old-fashioned Southern charm served hot and spicy. It was almost poetic. What are we doing here? The ringleader croaked, flailing one arm dramatically. You continue to bait us while we log these every second we stay. Excuse me, I interjected, swinging my arm like an orchestra conductor. Let's address something so we can skip the spirited debating workshop you clearly need. I drew in a brisk breath, feeling the electric charge of the night wrap around me. This is my barn, my canvas, not a hostel. You folks may have mistaken the genesis of reality. While you're free to stay elsewhere in your dream world, your membership here isn't valid. The thrust of my words sparked a ripple through the group. I could see that dawning realization begin to unfold behind their befuddled expressions. Did you hear that? Tommy whispered beside me, eyes gleaming with mischief. He leaned in. I think we just graduated from squatters to misguided dreamers in real time. My chuckled response burst forth as the dogs panted happily at my side, unsure of what this spectacle would culminate into, but clearly riding the wave of energy. Dangerous misadventures, light on structural integrity, but rich in survival instinct, I mused teasingly. The only thing missing is the diploma, boys, cartoonishly titled Breaking and Entering in Smart Casual. The bark of one of the less audacious squatters echoed in disbelief through the night, serving as the punchline to my zingers. A maddening energy charged through my chest. This was not merely about the barn anymore. This was my stage. A grand unraveling of comedy and defiance drenched in every pompous moment that life had served. With the nonsensical debate looming over us, I interjected one last flare of brilliance. You know what they call people who steal things they don't own? My eyes narrowed to glowing emerald daggers as I held their attention. Thieves? Did that register? The forces of grumpy indignation brushed against my good humor with the delicate touch of a 2-ton weight. Perhaps when you're done dancing around your grand inner pun, you could help me shovel this perfect chaos out of my workspace. Every word was a strike, hammering home the reality that inevitably drifted through our collective absurdity. I felt the dawning momentum shift in the air. I was no longer just a farmer defending her territory, but a warrior in a topsy-turvy showdown that had the potential to go down in the legend of our hometown. Look, this whole charade is utterly absurd, the ringleader stammered. And in that moment, I saw a flicker of vulnerability cross his brow, as if he finally recognized the absurdity underpinning his claims. It's like we've entered some kind of comedy skit. The words hung in the air like a spark igniting a forest fire. Fizzing laughter erupted from me, my triumphant howl drawing analytical glances from the rest of my chaotic audience. Welcome to the stage, darling. Here, we embrace the absurd and bathe in glorious resistance. I waved my hands, gesturing as if sealing our fate in an effusive gesture. The spotlight was unquestionably on them now. You're either comically inept or just plain lost. Why not save us all from this dramatic pause? Tell me, with all your dreamy intentions, are you ready to pack up or surrender? My fingers stung with the thrill of challenge. I was gunning for a resolution, and boy, did it feel good. The tide of this bizarre encounter had shifted dramatically, and I was riding on its crest like a blade of triumphant flash. With a final glare, I positioned accordingly, the illustrative absurdity building into a frenetic crescendo, the laughter we exuded turning palpably terrifying. Sometimes, one must embrace the red-faced hilarity of the absurd to cut through the overwhelming weight of it all. Would they finally retreat from this comically mismatched duel? Or were we in for yet another round of unpredictable antics? The air was electric, and while it felt like true chaos was just beginning, I couldn't help but indulge in the hope that both sides might finally show some common sense. Because God knows, we were all on the verge of a very wild ride. The squatters, gripped by sudden self-awareness, fidgeted like ants caught in a rainstorm, their bravado fraying at the edges. The ringleader's face was a kaleidoscope of emotions, confusion, indignation, and the subtle spark of realization that perhaps this venture had been a grand miscalculation. "We're not trying to take anything, just a place to rest our heads," he sputtered, the feigned bravado crumbling as he clutched his stomach like a child caught with a hand in the cookie jar. My laughter pierced the air like a clarion call, the sound of vindication and sheer disbelief at the absurdity of it all. A place to rest your heads? I leaned in, practically gleeful at the opportunity for further playful scorn. Here's a novel idea. Why not try asking for a bed at one of those fancy hotels instead of plopping down in my barn? I hear they come with complimentary breakfasts, something you clearly didn't pack. The banter sparked fire, and I reveled in the rising tide of energy surging among my loyal supporters and canine allies, the squatter's fear igniting a beacon of defiance within me. As the squatter's words rapidly devolved into a cacophony of incoherent protests, I could practically taste victory in the air. "But you don't understand. The system failed us. We've been treated like second-class citizens in our own community," he exclaimed, waving his arms like a self-appointed maestro of this curiously tragic symphony. "Oh, the irony. Please, spare me the drama," I snorted, rolling my eyes to the heavens in exaggerated exasperation. The melodrama was rich enough to win an Oscar, but the sentiment fell flat against the backdrop of righteous indignation. "Listen up. I'm sorry that your system failed you, but this isn't a reality show audition. You want support? Start by respecting the rights of those who worked hard for what they have. This barn isn't an episode in your sad little saga." With each word, I wove the truth like a tapestry, bright, bold, and unapologetically in their faces. The tension reversed, and I saw the flicker of uncertainty in their eyes, a momentary glimmer of doubt that told me I was winning. Tommy's laughter blended with mine, the two of us reveling in the absurdity that cracked the squatter's resolve like an eggshell underfoot. "You could write a self-help book on this insanity," he joked, nudging me with his elbow, that infectious grin spreading wide across his face. The Squatter's Guide to Fumbling in the Face of Crazy Compassion. My heart raced as I seized the moment, the dogs prancing excitedly around us, caught up in the victorious atmosphere. I would title Chapter 1, How to Lose Your Mind and Arguments, All in One Night. I hollered, enjoying the dismay blossoming within our audience. The squatter's defiance was rapidly thinning, and I dreamed of the day I might write that book, my own revival of a tumultuous fight wrapped in wit and fierce laughter, gaining the glory it so richly deserved. I could almost imagine that book jacket, emblazoned with illustrations of hapless squatters caught in a web of their own making. Honestly, I should thank you all. You're providing the fodder for my best work. Just as I thought my grandeur and humor were ferociously unrelenting, the ringleader pushed back, summoning an essence of raw desperation. "So what now, Lila? You think your dogs make you brave? You think this resort to laughter will scare us away?" He thrust his finger out accusingly, a last feeble attempt to reclaim the narrative. "Oh, darling, my feisty pups have sharper teeth than your misguided intentions," I roared, throwing my head back in boisterous laughter. "But I'm not just counting on my doggy defenders. No, in fact, I'm summoning the fire of my fury." With dramatic flair, I spread my arms as if rallying an invisible army behind me. Your time here is over. You've never belonged on this sacred ground. You think you can bully your way into someone's life? Not on my watch. I knew every word struck a chord as the once handy bravado melted away like snow under the blazing sun, revealing the underlying panic that threatened their smug facade. I felt the weight of the crowd shift, my allies gathering strength as hope surged. I spotted the neighbors peeking from behind their doors, their curiosity piqued at witnessing this bizarre theater unfold. With a renewed sense of confidence, I seized the moment. Perhaps the height of melodrama could be just the weapon I needed. You see, folks, you can choose to challenge the echoes of common sense with stubborn adventures, or you can pack up and trot off into the glorious sunset you seem to have written for yourselves. My words drifted like a spell over the audience, light glinting off the newly overcast conditions of defeat, swirling amongst the squatters. Lucky for you, there's still time to make an exit, but you'd better make it quick. I don't tolerate tears or theatrics. You're already outmatched? Pack up or prepare your exit codes, because this barn will not serve as your stage. My heart hammered in my chest, adrenaline coursing through me like wildfire. The other options dwindling against the specter of humiliation looming before them. As I held their gaze, I witnessed the dawning reality crack like thunder over the horizon. Perhaps they finally realized that we, the so-called oppressors here, wouldn't back down. With each passing heartbeat, our standoff edged closer to its inevitable conclusion. Okay, we'll go. Just give us a moment. The ringleader spat, his bravado crumbling into a pile of rubble as distressed murmurs erupted from his companions. I could barely stave off the irresistible urge to dance in triumph, my dogs wagging their tails as they stood sentry beside me, their victory almost tangible in the declining dusk. Oh, it looks like the curtain must fall on this quaint little production, I quipped, a wide grin plastering my face. I do hope the next act comes equipped with basic manners. You are stealing my show. As the squatters hastily gathered what they could salvage from this ridiculous venture, I turned to Tommy, my loyal companion, basking in shared victory. What a show that was. I feel like we flipped the script on their wild melodrama. I chuckled, watching their ego quickly deflate like a balloon with a pinprick, while my dogs pranced around as if setting the stage for a grand finale. Victory at last. The farm shall remain mine. My heart soared, the weight of violation lifting as I remembered the true reason behind my fight. Protecting my piece of earth filled me with both gratitude and resilience. Yet as I stood there, surveying the ruffled edges of my barn, I couldn't help but wonder, what would become of these misguided squatters after tonight? Would they wander back into their shadows, forever etched into my memory? A reminder that even amidst chaos, I had the power to reclaim my sanctuary. As the final remnants of the squatters clanked gracelessly into their makeshift bags, I couldn't help but gloat over their sheer insignificance. Farewell. The world awaits your professional mishaps, I shouted, waving like a deranged queen at a low-budget parade. It was almost comedic how their retreat transformed from grandiloquent claims of injustice into a chaotic scramble, punctuated by whispered curses and flustered apologies that seemed to evaporate in the crisp, early evening air. The absurdity of it all chewed at my insides, sparking a familiar mix of indignation and laughter. While the squatters clanked their way out, I positioned my canine companions at my side like fierce sentinels, a line of fluffy wrath defining my newfound fortress. Tommy sidled closer, still chuckling at the spectacle we had just orchestrated together. His laughter was contagious as it bubbled up, rich with camaraderie. "Did you see the look on their faces?" he gasped between fits of amusement, wiping a tear from his eye. "You turned their claims into punchlines. They didn't even know what hit them." I felt a huge swell of pride at his words. The absurdity had morphed into an empowering balm for all the frustrations I had buried deep over the past weeks. I nodded, relishing the moment as I watched the encroaching twilight cloak my barn in a reassuring embrace. A sanctuary of reclaimed space, not just a tool of labor, but a symbol of resilience. "It's official, Tommy. I should start a business." Lila's laughable lessons in domestic defense. The shadows of the retreating squatters faded as they faltered further down the road, leaving me and Tommy basking in our shared victory. The disarray they left in their wake caused a peculiar shift within me. A mere barn was not just wood and nails, but a manifestation of years of love, labor, and commitment to the land. Suddenly, the gritty texture of the day took on a more vital hue, amplified by the space I had reclaimed for myself and my dreams. "Let's go inside. It's time for a celebratory drink," I exclaimed, my voice rich with unfiltered gusto. We strolled purposefully toward my barn. The once crumbling theater of despair had transformed spectacularly into a heartwarming fortress of dreams, the true mark of ownership shining brightly before me. As we stepped inside, I was overwhelmed by the comforting familiarity of the enormous oak beams that cradled my childhood memories and the spilled remnants of harvests past. I threw open the doors with a flourish, allowing the fading light to dance across the old wood, illuminated by the vestiges of days gone by. I could practically hear the echoes of my father's laughter as we once built the hayloft up high, the very same space that had served as the unwitting lodging for my uninvited guests. "This barn has been through thick and thin, and I'll not let it serve as a glorified Airbnb for self-pity," I declared, winking at Tommy, who was already rummaging through the various tools left scattered about. Tommy pulled out a couple of dusty mugs emblazoned with farmy slogans, classic relics from the early days when I first dreamt of nurturing my land. "How about we toast to victory?" he suggested, eyeing me with that cheeky grin that always sent a thrill of defiance bubbling through my veins. Within minutes, we had poured our beverages of choice, Tommy's beer and my homemade iced tea, and raised our mugs to the fading sunlight filtering through the cracks. "To us," I cheered, cracking open the moment for what it was truly worth. "To my steadfast dogs, loyal friends, and indomitable spirits that know no bounds." We clinked mugs, letting that exhilarating sense of triumph wash over us like the first drops of rain after an unbearable drought. Suddenly, the barn doors creaked ominously, sending a dart of alertness through me. I whipped around, mug poised for action, a warrior defending her realm from unsolicited intruders. Just as the familiar silhouettes of my fierce furry protectors appeared in the doorframe, I burst out laughing, the tension dissipating, as I felt ridiculous for having expected another wave of chaos. "Look who's back, the merry mischief makers," I mockingly announced, cradling each dog's regal head as though they were conquering heroes. It was a hilariously absurd image of dogs, all wriggles and wagging tails, forming a nameless barrier of love and protection against present absurdities. But the bizarre happenings of the day hadn't yet settled entirely within the confines of my mind. I subtly wondered whether I might run into those misadventurous squatters down the line. Would they march back into town, feebly recounting tales of their valiant efforts, while their pride lay belly up in the gutter? Were they even capable of reflection? Or would they indulge in the comforts of outrage for warmth against the night's chill? I waved away the thoughts, shaking my head as I still reveled slightly in their regretful shuffle. Honestly, it's hard to imagine how anyone could think my barn was a welcome mat, I chuckled, leaning into Tommy, whose laughter was infectious. Next time I should hang a sign, "No squatters allowed, but feel free to visit for a sound flogging instead." A hiccup of hearty laughter escaped me, crystallizing the depth of my resolve as I leaned into the absurdity of it all, determined to celebrate this singular moment of reclamation. In that twilight spent with my dogs and Tommy, I felt utterly content. I had faced down the unexpected chaos, and by the end of the day, I stood victorious over the trials and tribulations that had unfurled before me. "It's just a barn," I reminded myself softly, sparkling in the glow of sunset. But sometimes it's so much more. I felt like the weight of external expectations had shattered like glass, revealing my truth. The determination shielded behind laughter had paved an avenue for recoveries that spanned beyond mere shelter. In the embrace of twilight, as I prepared to close the barn doors, I couldn't help but smile. After all, life was an endless stage, and I intended to keep the laughter roaring